Hello, everyone. My name is George Harris. I'm curator and artistic director here at Two Rivers Gallery. I'd like to welcome you all very much to this Facebook Live event, and thank you for joining us on this lovely, warm summer evening. Today marks the beginning of our two new exhibitions, Her Voice, an exhibition featuring work by 20 women artists from the permanent collection, and Nicola Harwood's interactive sound installation, Summoning No Words. Because of the present health crisis, we're unable to host a reception and talk in person, so we are thrilled that you would join us for this alternative format. Before we get started, however, I'd like to acknowledge that Two Rivers Gallery is located on the traditional, unceded territory of the Lheidli T'enneh. I'd like to express my sincere thanks to Lheidli T'enneh elder Darlene McIntosh for joining this evening to say a few words. Darlene, would you like to say a few words?
Yes. Thank you, George. Howdy to everybody who will be viewing this live presentation on Facebook. We are definitely in a new era of welcoming new exhibits and new artists at the Two Rivers Gallery. It is my honor and pleasure to welcome Nicola Harwood, whose exhibition is Summoning No Words, which looks absolutely fascinating. Now, let's take a look and focus on our breath. I'm sure that we're all a little bit nervous and ungrounded coming into something that's new and different for us. So take that nice, deep, cleansing breath into your body. Nice, deep, cleansing breath. Taking a few deep breaths, reconnecting to yourselves. As we breathe into our bodies, allow us to be present to what will be taking place tonight, focusing on being in the absolute moment. These are unusual and exciting times. As an elder with Lheidli T'enneh Nation, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to our traditional territories. We, the Lheidli T'enneh Nation, have been on our traditional lands over 9,000 years as supported by lithic evidence. The changes have taken place over thousands of years supports the enduring strength, courage, and fortitude of our people. Our governance through the Batla has brought balance and harmony with our brothers and sisters of other First Nations people. Lheidli T'enneh's clans are Fra, Glasilu, Grau, Sutsut, Beavert, Sa, and Bear Sus. Through this system, we know who our family connections are. Through our oral history, the use of legends told of our travels, our hunting and fishing territories, our trading practices with all peoples. May remember and hold steadfast on what Creator's blessed us with, and that is our traditional territories. Our ancestors have always welcomed people to our territories. On behalf of Lheidli T'enneh's elders, our youth, community members, and chief and council, it is absolutely our honor to welcome each and every one of you to our traditional territories. All my relations must see. Thank you, and enjoy the evening. Must see. Okay, George.
Thank you very much, Darlene. Tonight we are thrilled to have Nicola Harwood with us, and of course that is the focus of this evening's presentation. Before we get to Nicola, I wanted to acknowledge that, of course, we have two exhibitions opening tonight, and the second exhibition, in fact, the first exhibition as you enter the two gallery spaces, is Her Voice, and this is an exhibition that features work by 20 women artists represented in the collection, and they are Vivian Antonov, Shauna Dempsey and Laurie Milan, Judith Desbrisay, Doris DeTaro, Maureen Faulkner, Penina Grenier, Mo Hamilton, Ruth Hansen, Betty Kovacic, Maud Lewis, Lou Lin, Caroline Morehouse, Linda Ohama, Patricia Piddington, Anne Bogle, Teresa Sapergia, Linda Stambridge, June Swanky Parker, and Tira Warburg. We're very grateful indeed to have this work in our collection representing these artists. And over the days and weeks to come, there will be a variety of programs that we will roll out that will relate to that exhibition as well as to Nicola Harwood's exhibition. I wanted to acknowledge also the hard work of Megan Hunter-Gauthier, who has spent significant efforts organizing this exhibition, particularly in its later stages, and I just wanted to acknowledge that hard work too. Tonight, we are very pleased to be spending some time with Nicola Harwood. Nicola teaches creative writing and expressive arts at Kwantlen Polytechnic University. She's a writer and a theater and interdisciplinary artist. And she's been up here with her colleague and sound specialist, Simon Lysander Overstall, preparing and tuning the sound installation in the exhibition space for the better part of this last week. And in fact, she's leaving us later on this evening. I want to let you know that there will be time for questions after Nicola's talk. We can't see your faces and we can't hear your voices. And so if you have any questions, please write them into the Facebook chat live, and Megan will read those questions out to Nicola after the talk. So thank you all for that. Thank you all for contributing. Without further ado then, let me hand it over to Nicola Harwood. Welcome, Nicola, and thank you for your exhibition. Thank you for your time here. And maybe I could perhaps start by asking you a question, and then I'll get out of your way and leave it up to you. But I wonder if you can tell us what is it that we should expect when we enter the exhibition space in which your sound installation is contained?
Thank you, George, and thank you very much, Darlene, for welcoming me, myself and my project to your traditional territories. This is a sound installation that is interactive. So it is built from contributed vocal original compositions from 7 different female Canadian singers. And what happens is when you move into the exhibition, people's bodies actually stimulates the sound. So there's quite a variety of different audio, and sometimes it's very gentle and very soft, and other times it builds. And so people can actually almost play it like an instrument. As they move through the space, they will stimulate more and more sound, and the sound will build and recede in relation to how people move. And every interaction is unique. So it's always changing because it's always responding to people in the space. So that's what folks will experience. And I guess I'll carry on. I will do, so I'm going to present a little bit on this project, and I'm going to start, I'm going to screen share some images, and I'm going to play a piece of the audio. I'm just playing it on my computer. It's certainly not nearly the quality that you'd get in the gallery, but I just want to give people a little taste. So I'm going to pull that up right now. And what I'll do is while I'm, I got to screen share it. So hold on, let me just get this first of all. I'm going to get it going. I'm going to get to the right page, and then I'm going to screen share. that's the sound sample. As I said, it changes every time. There's a bed of whispers underneath that was all contributed by community members, young women mostly, students and friends and poets, that are little prayers, evocations, stories. So the whispers, it always returns to the whispers, and then the voices are stimulated. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of the original process of creating this work. This is an image. The center, there's a hand-beaten copper bowl that we created, and the little bundles around it are all, I think we saw back here, people created those in the original installation. And so every installation, people create more bundles, and they're just basically a prayer, an offering to the piece, so that as the piece is shown, it gathers more and more bundles. And we take good care of them in between shows, and because every single one is an individual offering from somebody who's seen the show and wanted to offer their thoughts. This piece is built as a response to violence against women, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as I introduce you to some of the other artists. It's a large group of artists that contributed to this work. So let's get to the artists. I'm going to start. I'm just going to start. This is myself in the middle with Kara Soko, who's our sound engineer, and Uche Makatambeg, who is one of the artists. And this is Rosemary Georgeson, and I'm showing her because this was our original conversation. Was her and I had worked on a project in Williams Lake for a couple of years, which was a community engaged project working with Silcotin youth and community members to create a short film, a documentary film, interviewing elders, and also a youth project on how youth were, what their current life was like in Williams Lake. I spent time growing up in Williams Lake, and we were looking at the Squaw Hall, which was the dance hall, the indigenous dance hall at the Williams Lake Stampede, which had a very complicated and racist history. But also when we interviewed folks, we found out great stories. Everybody had stories of, family gatherings, and some really positive memories of old times at the Williams Lake Stampede. So I worked for 2 years with Rosemary on that project. And during that time, we talked about potentially, she was interested in a project that looked at safety of women on the road. And what that meant, because both Rosemary and I like to take road trips. And so we talked about that. And in that came up the Highway of Tears. And then we kind of, the conversation left, and I went off and she went off, and we worked on other things. But it stayed in my head, and I kept generating ideas about how I wanted to maybe respond to this idea. And so this project grew out of that conversation. So Rosemary never actually worked on the project, but I always want to acknowledge her because it was that initial conversation that got it started. And she's been a great person to work with over in other projects. So this is Andrea Minard. She contributed a piece of music. She's a Métis singer, quite well known in Saskatchewan. She's now on the coast. She contributed a piece in a Plains Cree tradition. You heard her voice in that piece. This is Alison Girvin. She's a trained soprano in a classical, Western classical music. She also does a lot of world music, and she's a choral leader. She works with youth, does profound work actually in community with youth. And she's contributed. She's a beautiful soprano voice. This is Bessie Wapp. She contributed. She's a collaborator. Both these people I've worked with a lot. I've worked with all of these artists in different projects. And Bessie contributed a Yiddish lullaby, an original Yiddish lullaby. Mucha Makatampeg, she also worked in the Williams Lake Project, and she's a Filipino woman, and she contributed that deep, low voice, quite experimental vocal piece. Sandy Schofield, another Métis singer, and she works also in jazz and contemporary forms. And she contributed also a piece that works from a Plains Cree tradition. Beautiful, beautiful vocalizations. And Tanya Tagak, who is now wasn't able to ask her to create something original because I honestly did not have enough money. So by the time I got the funding, I said, Tanya, can I license a piece? So we've licensed her piece Flight, which you heard the very intensity of her throat singing was in that piece, that sample, when it gets really intense. So Tanya's piece became the center that we built around because it was the fixed piece. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. And this is Vandana Vishwas is the last vocal artist, and she's South Asian, and she contributed a piece based in classical. She works in classical Northern and also classical Southern Indian music. And she's in Toronto. I have not worked with her before. I just contacted her because I was looking for a piece representing her community. And this is Don McDonald. He's a composer I've worked with. He's Alison's husband, actually, and he created the parameters for the composer. So we're working off of Tanya's piece. He set the key and the rhythm, like he had parameters, compositional parameters that we sent out to the singers, and all the singers composed individually without hearing anybody else's piece. So they just worked within these parameters that we hoped would work. And so Don loves experimentation, and Simon, who I'll introduce you to, who is the sound and interactive designer who was with me this week installing, they were very open to this experiment, this idea I had. What if we had an interactive design with a bunch of women singing? What would happen in a space? That was my idea. And Don was keen on that. So he created the parameters. We sent them to composers, and they all sent us back 1 to 3 minutes of audio that then we edited. This is Simon. So he's the interactive designer. So he did all the computer programming with the edited pieces of audio. Kara worked with each sound engineer. They worked with me editing all the pieces down into very small little files. This is Michaela. She was a student assistant who was a big help in the first iteration. And Tawaham Bege, he was a Dene poet and artist, and he was also a help. He was also one of my student assistants. So it was a big crew on this show. It's a massive group of people that all contributed their expertise and labor and love. And this is our hands, because the first iteration of the show, we did a large fabric portion as well. And we worked with, this is Michaela and Valerie D. Walker, who taught us how to do indigo dye and shibori dyeing. And she's a force. She works with electronics and fabric, so she's a very interesting artist as well. And we set up our first iteration of the show we did in Oxygen Art Center in Nelson, BC. We had a 1-month residency. So this is Michaela. We created all these panels because I was actually quite concerned about sound quality, and I wanted to dampen it slightly in this space that's all concrete and drywall. So what she's doing is rolling fabric on a tube that then you dip in those buckets behind her. The garbage cans are full of indigo dye, which is a natural dye and a fascinating process. You actually brew it almost like beer. You have to add sugar to it every day and keep it warm. And it brews and is lovely to work with. It's really non-toxic, all biodegradable, and beautiful. This is Simon with his interactive crown of thorns. He spent the whole time on the computer working with all the sound files while we were doing fabric work. So this is a joke because this actual sensor that he built didn't work. So this is why I created this image of him looking a bit like a martyr. And he had to do something new. That was Sunday before he opened on Thursday after a month of residency. That was that night. This is us doing the dyeing process. So we spent a month creating this fabric shelter, really is what it became. And people came from the community. We invited everybody just to come down, and the process is very simple and generous. The dye is generous. The shibori techniques are very generous. You can go walk in the space with no experience and within an hour have a piece drying on the rack that is beautiful. So folks got quite involved. Lots of people came back more than once. We had probably 35 or 40 people come through the space and participate in this process over the month that we were there. And this is Kobe. She teaches at the art school. She had experience, you can tell. This is a lovely detailed piece. And that's someone who really knows what they're doing. But of course, anybody can make something quite beautiful. This is a much more experimental form. Basically, it's a tie-dye, same process. Wherever you put pressure, the dye does not go. And this is us building the temple. People brought their sewing machines from the community and came and sewed. And we worked together to create this. And this is us raising the temple walls. And this is Bessie, one of the singers. I don't know if you recognize her, but she came down one day and sang for us as we worked. And this is Simon on the computer. This is actually at Two Rivers. This is what the design looks like in the, we call under the hood in the background. This is him programming all the voices. This is what is behind the curtain. This is like the Wizard of Oz, the speakers and the sound system all behind the, and this is what we built in Nelson. So this was the original iteration of the work when we had all the pieces sewn together and put together. This was a next, and we did another iteration in Vancouver. I don't have images of. This was at Smithers Music Festival. We were given this massive metal hanger and we had to, a community member brought in 135 bales of hay to dampen the sound. So that was quite a challenge. That's Simon installing. This is the piece there. A community member brought her cello down and played with the piece. And that was really a lovely, lovely day. And now we are at Two Rivers and really looking forward to it. And I wanted just to make a big shout out of thank you to George and to Megan for all their hard work. It's been a long, hard week of work. And I'll just leave you with this final image of a kid. Children love this show. They really love it. And oh, no, that's Simon at Two Rivers. Sorry, there's Two Rivers again. That's us setting up in Two Rivers. And then this final image of this girl at the Smithers Music Festival. She's 4 years old. She came back 4 times because she just loved interacting with the piece. So it's very child friendly. Kids tend to really like it. It can be a little intense for them, but once they understand that they can make it work, they really quite enjoy it. And that's my talk. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Nicola.
Yeah.
We have some time for questions. If you are able to write your questions on Facebook Live in the chat section, Megan is monitoring those questions and will relay them to Nicola. Megan, do you have any questions there?
Hi, everyone. Yes, I've got some questions to share with Nicola. So one of the questions is, well, they state, "Hi, Nicola. I love the concept of having different female voices and styles contributing to this, and then having the narrative change when people enter the space. I find it very powerful. I'm curious what the significance of the Shibori dyeing technique was. When you were showing pictures, it reminded me of a sewing bee."
Yes. It was interesting because honestly, when we first started out, I was really worried about sound quality in the space we were moving into. And I thought we have to dampen the walls. And I thought we'd have to foam up on the walls. What do we have to do? And then I thought, well, why don't we work with fabric and make something beautiful? And I was just personally really intrigued with indigo dye at that moment. And so I started to investigate and research, and turned out that I was friends with an artist who was involved in that. And so we talked, that was Valerie. And I went down that road of really falling in love with that process. And I kind of come out of, I've worked with clay before. I really like craft-based processes, hand work. And the work also was very much a sewing bee. It became, we had men come down. It was mostly women. People came because they felt very moved by the project. And it's women's work. Gathering and sewing and creating work with fabric is something that we've done for millennium. And it had that same effect of just being together working. And that's how women have traditionally shared their stories with one another and been together in community. And it certainly recreated that sensation and recreated that feeling in a contemporary context. So the Two Rivers show, and I have to say the Two Rivers show, we have a sample of it on the wall, but because of COVID, we are not installing the fabric because the last thing people need is a tent-like structure that keeps our air close to each other. So it's naked at Two Rivers. It's still beautiful and it'll have its own ambiance. But we did not install the tent here. So that's, I wanted to show people photos of how it turned out the first time that we did it.
Got another question for you. How long does it take to install this exhibition, or has it taken to install this exhibition?
Well, what we've discovered is we've done it very quickly in festival environments where we've had to get in a matter of hours and put it in. But it really, it took us almost a week here. It was beautifully tuned, and then we opened it up and suddenly it was not being, not following directions. And so Simon has to get into the guts of the machine and find out what's going on. And then of course we have to do rigging and stuff like that. So rigging, because we have a rig that is above, is a bit of a slow process because we're doing high work. If we're doing the tent, that's really in labor intensive process. Even not doing that, it took us 6 days, 5 days, I guess, 5 full days of work, I think, to experiment with it and get it to the point where it was doing what we wanted it to do, which is that it, the work is stimulated by the bodies in the space, but it doesn't overplay. So there's spaciousness in it, and the interactive design is working in a way that's inviting and also playful, and that people can really get it, that, oh, I can play with this. So it's fairly intensive. I keep hoping that we'll get it to the point where we can hand it over to somebody and say, here you go, just plug it in, but it's not quite there yet.
Another great comment and question. They said that, I love the surprise and heart of stumbling across the installation at the Smithers Music Festival 3 years ago.
Cool.
It was a challenging space for sure. What kind of feedback did you get from that experience?
Pretty good. You know, I don't think we put out a book. I wish we had. It was one of those things where we didn't put out something for people to write comments in. I don't think, but people came back again and again. It was really interesting to put it up at the music festival, which is, you know, a kind of down home event where everybody knows each other. You know, it's very community based. I'm a rural person, so I know that environment and I love it. But we were installing this kind of weird thing over in the hangar. And I remember just before we opened going, oh man, is this a good fit? Like, is this a fit? I don't know. And people came in and were sort of like, what is this? And of course, this, you know, this massive space that we were in. But word spread over the weekend, and people came back again and stayed for long periods of time in the space. And so, you know, my impression was that it worked really well. And it did work in the context of the Community Music Festival, which really made my heart happy, because it's a piece that's creating, you know, I'm trying to create a sense of a temple or a sanctuary for people who have been harmed by violence or who care about this violence against women. And that's hard stuff for people. And this area, particularly the Highway of Tears, is there's such deep grief and deep harm that's been done. It feels like a big risk to say, we're putting this here, and please come, and hope that it is a space that people find fills them and holds them. And also, you know, it's political to talk about this work. So it's risky in lots of different ways. And putting it in a community music festival felt like a big risk in some ways as to whether or not folks were going to be willing, but people were very willing. And it was a very full weekend. Lots of people came through. So it was really heartwarming to see how welcomed it was at that time. And thanks for coming.
Another person asked, can you talk more about the bundles that you showed in one of your pictures?
Yeah, so I I come from a, you know, a European, somewhat Wiccan, witch-like background, and you know, I don't really, it's not super my thing, but to try and figure out ritual is very interesting and important to me, and how do we, it's important for me that we engage the body in somehow, that we do, it's a ritual gesture. So ritual gesture being something like in marriage, you put a ring, you know, in certain cultural traditions, a ring goes on a finger. So that's a ritual gesture. Different ceremonies have different ceremonies, different rituals have a gesture, you know, graduation ceremonies, etc. So for this, I felt like this was a way for people to physicalize, to create something. It was easy for us. We were working in cloth. We had lots of pieces of cloth. This was something where people could easily participate in the work through a physical gesture, and take the time that they needed with their process, physicalizing a process and externalizing a process, to contribute their prayer and care to the work. And so that's what those bundles are. And as I said earlier, every show it grows as people contribute. Usually I have a table set out, as you saw in the images, for folks to make stuff, but we're not doing that in Two Rivers because of COVID. So what we're encouraging folks is to bring one from home. And we had white cloth out, but I'm very open, whatever people have on hand, they can just make something. I just encourage people not to, you know, if they want to add something to their bundle that's, you know, plant-like, just make sure that it's not going to rot because they sit for a while and we bundle them up and take them with us. So just make sure that it's, you know, something that will dry well and travel with the work. But people are welcome to bring an offering to the piece. So to me, the physicalizing is part of how we move energy through our bodies, how we move grief or prayer through our bodies. Rather than just receiving something, you get to participate with a gesture.
Got another question for you. What was it like collaborating with so many people for this one exhibition?
It's a big piece of what I come out of theater, so I'm used to large collaborations to create work, and I really like collaborating with people. And it was different than theater in that we all are in the same room together. This was more like talking to people. Some people were in my community that I could speak with in person. Some people, it was all happened over distance. Just, you know, I live sometimes in the Kootenay, sometimes in Vancouver, so I have a strong Kootenay community that were contributing. This project went pretty well. People, you know, it was very focused in that I knew what I wanted, so I had the vision. I said, please do this for me. And so people could respond quite easily and directly with the response. And, you know, I raised the money and commissioned folks to do it and discussed it with the various different people of how it would work. Some projects I work on are more collaborative in the vision of it, and that's a lot more work because then we all need to come to a coordinated expression that we want to do, where this one was more, I had the vision, so then I was just able to ask people to specifically contribute their original creations to that and work, and I was more than happy. I was thrilled with everybody's contribution. So it was a pretty easeful collaborative process. Quite joyful actually when I received people's, especially the music when it came in and I got to listen and go, whoa, okay, this is going to be fantastic. There was so many gifts that people contributed to the work.
Well, Nicola, I would like to thank you very much for your time and for your words today. I have really enjoyed working with you over this last week, and Simon as well. It's been a pleasure, and sometimes adjusting to those technological and other challenges, a wee bit of a challenge indeed. But again, I wanted to thank you sincerely for your time, your effort, your perseverance, and for the exhibition that you've left us with.
Just shout out to Simon because he works really hard on this show, and he should be here beside me, but he flew home today. So he's home in Vancouver, and he's a very, very strong artist and a really great collaborator. And thank you very much to the gallery. And thank you again, Darlene, for welcoming us to your territory.
Yes, indeed. Also, I'd like to thank all of you who have joined us on Facebook Live. I recognize that this is not the same as an exhibition opening and a larger community event, but I'm thrilled that we could at least take the step to acknowledge this exhibition and to share Nicola and her ideas and her exhibition through this particular format. I'd love to encourage you all to please come and visit the gallery. These two exhibitions will be here until October the 4th. As I think many of you know, the gallery is presently operating with reduced hours in response to some of the observations we have to make with respect to the present health crisis. So we are open Monday to Friday from 10 to 5. As the pandemic evolves, please contact the gallery for updated information with regard to operating times. Thank you, all of you. Thank you, Nicola. Thank you, Darlene. Thank you, Megan. And thank you, folks out there in Facebook land. It's been a pleasure. And thank you for joining us. I look forward to seeing you at the gallery. Have a lovely evening.